Oh yes, the jingle bells, the sleigh bells hath returneth. It is December 1st. It's time for another press conference reaction. Newcastle United versus Manchester United tomorrow evening at St James's Park. 8 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday. Unbelievable stuff. But we're here to talk about the press conference reaction. Erik ten Hag has talked to the assembled media at Carrington ahead of tomorrow evening's Premier League clash. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Friday. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Let me know where you're watching from on this Friday lunchtime. Let me know how excited you are or aren't ahead of tomorrow's Premier League fixture. Let me know as well what your plans are for Christmas or for the holidays, or if you like an advent calendar. We had this conversation this morning, Flex and myself, talking about, do you do advent calendars that much anymore? And we both said not really, not really. You used to when you were younger, and you go through phases of advent calendars, don't you? I mean, for me, I went through a situation where, when you're younger, you just kind of have whatever really sort of show you like, isn't it? You have whatever really, if you like, I don't know, Marvel films, you have like an Iron Man calendar or something like that, you have like a Batman advent calendar, or you have whatever, a Man United advent calendar, and then you open it up December 1st, you guys, December 1st, I'm gonna have some chocolate. I'm going to have some chocolate from the advent calendar. You open it up and you put the chocolate in. You go, oh, that tastes rubbish. That tastes awful. And as you get older and you get wiser, then you start thinking, right, if I'm going to do the advent calendar thing properly this year, you go with chocolate brands. You go with Cadbury's. You go, or whatever ones they have, Dairy Milk. You go with Mars Bar. You go with Maltesers. You go with Galaxy. Just go whatever, Kinder Bueno. You go whatever you want, really. That's what you want. That's what you got to go with when it comes to the advent calendar. You get good chocolate. And then it's kind of redundant, isn't it? Because by the time it sort of gets to sort of a week before Christmas, there's other chocolate just laying around the house anyway. Why do you need to have that tiny bit in the morning where you can just go to the fridge and there's a giant bloody bar in there? You can just have whatever you want. There's selection packs that are there meant for Christmas. You just eat them anyway, and then you curl up in a ball and cry on your own in bed. That's maybe just me. I don't know if that's just me. Anyway, move on. And the therapy session is now over. We got some questions to get into and some answers from the boss. Bit of a short press conference today. I will be live later on this evening, 10:45-ish. For late night news, as we see the embargoed part of the press conference, as well as any other news that happens throughout the day or before the game tomorrow. There is going to be a preview, a reminder, this evening, 6 p.m. You can see it right there. Tonight, 6 p.m, Matty Renton and Flex break down the game as well. And then, of course, tomorrow is the match view, the full match day experience. Let's get straight into the press conference. And the first question was from Simon Stone, who really was on top form today with the Simon Stone impression, to be honest with you. I know sometimes you can say, Owen, you overdo it. You over emphasize the stutters and the stops and the sort of, but it was really like that today. Eric, Kobbie, Kobbie Mainoo, he came on Wednesday in Istanbul. What? Sometimes there's just no words. Just that kind of noise from the sort of the back of the throat. What things have you got to sort of consider before putting an 18-year-old into the team? And Ten Hag said, if he's ready or not, he showed on Sunday he was ready, and then we have to manage 3 games in 6 days to get the best results of all the games. We have more than 11 players. We have good options there. Sofian showed he was playing a good game. We have to manage the load of the players, and it's about freshness as well. Now, I think like a lot of people, was very surprised to see Kobbie Mainoo not start in Istanbul against Galatasaray on Wednesday. I think most people, the moment that Kobbie started against Everton, and then after the performance against Everton, where he really was man of the match, best United player on the pitch, probably best player on the pitch in general, I think the general kind of feeling and sentiment, wasn't it, is that he's starting against Galatasaray. And then he didn't. And when he came on, he did well once again. He quite literally
done okay
when he came on. And again, I was surprised to not see him start. Maybe Ten Hag just kind of felt, maybe it's a bit too much too soon. And a bit like we were saying before, where it's not necessarily just of the inexperience or the age or anything like that. You're coming back from a knee injury, a serious knee injury. He was out for 3 or 4 months with the knee issue that he suffered in pre-season. So you want to manage that load. I mean, that's what he's just said there in his quote, saying that we got, 3 games, 6 days. We want to manage him for that. So I took away from that as a pretty good indication he's probably going to start tomorrow, right? I think that's probably the case. He's probably going to start tomorrow. I would be, just like I was surprised Wednesday that he didn't start, I would be very surprised if he didn't start against Newcastle, because we're going to need that. The midfield battle, particularly against Newcastle, is so important. They play with such an intensity, and their midfield is so physical, so strong. You got Joelinton, literally just once he gets going, you can't really get near him. They got big, tough, solid players. Bruno Guimaraes is obviously very, very good as well. So we're going to need those players that can kind of get their foot on the ball, slow things down, keep the ball, not be so erratic on the ball as well. And I've said that word so often recently about Andre Onana, which we're going to get to extensively throughout this press conference reaction, but also the players in midfield, against Everton in particular. Bruno in the first half, not so bad in the second half, but Bruno can be very, very erratic. Scott McTominay is such a baffling case study for a Manchester United midfielder. And I don't mean this with disrespect, I really don't. But you watch his play throughout the game, and technically he won't make many passes. Interceptions, won't do many. Will give the ball away quite a bit, but he scores. Then he scores, and you go, I've got to keep him in the team because he keeps scoring. Same against Galatasaray in the week. He literally did okay, but there are other better options available. I would like to see Kobbie Mainoo or maybe Amrabat together more often. But McTominay gets goals. He constantly gets goals this season. And when you've had it, particularly in the Premier League, when you've not been scoring goals, your front three or your attacking players haven't been scoring goals, it's almost maybe silly to take a player out of the side that is scoring goals. So that's kind of why McTominay's in there at the moment. But given the quotes there, and given the responses there by Erik ten Hag, I have a feeling that Kobbie Mainoo will start. And it was just a case of maybe Ten Hag looking ahead to the other games that we've got coming up, not just obviously this game tomorrow, but the future games as well, knowing that we've got obviously Newcastle, then we've got Chelsea, and there'll be a desire, I would think, to have him start both of them, because these are 2 really, really, really big games. So I would probably think that's the kind of direction that he's looking at, Newcastle and Chelsea, and it just goes to show, doesn't it? Maybe what state our midfield is in at the moment, but also how important Kobbie Mainoo could be to Manchester United. Is that already we're going, he's got to play. He's got to play tomorrow. He's got to play against Chelsea in the week as well, because he's already just that important and that much of a quality player, certainly. What are people saying in the chat at the moment as well? Big up Rich in the chat. Rich loves a press conference. This is a secret. That is a secret no more. Rich loves a press conference. And so big up Rich. He's here every time. And says other chocolate brands are available. That is true. Other chocolate brands are available other than the ones I mentioned. If they do wish to sort of sponsor us, or just me. If I could get a chocolate sponsorship, I'd be all kinds of shameless. You'd see me on the morning shows. You'd see me full-time view, whatever show it may be. I'd be full on. Could you imagine me? Just Galaxy t-shirt or a Galaxy jacket. I don't even think they make them, but everywhere. We change this background just to some kind of Galaxy promo or whatever, or whatever chocolates available. Actually, let me know in the chat, what's your favorite brand of chocolate? While we're here, these press conferences can be pretty dry. Doesn't need to be. So yeah, let me know. Let me know in the chat. Super chat from Waiting for United to win the Prem. I tell you what, it's a long running gag that waiting for United to win the Prem, and I respect the commitment to the bit. Honestly, it's as accounts go. Yeah, I respect it. If Maguire was petty, he would have shouted at Onana like Onana did to him when he made the mistake. He's better than me for real. A lot of people really focused on that thing in pre-season, haven't they? Really, really, really focused on that. Jamie Carragher, I saw today, has written a piece on Andre Onana. And you do get the impression, don't you, that particularly like him, he's just waiting because he decided he didn't like Andre Onana because he shouted at Harry Maguire in that pre-season game and made such a massive stink over that when it wasn't abnormal from really any goalkeeper and any defender in any football team. And that's what surprised me. I guess it shouldn't, but surprised me the most from him as a centre-back. He'll know that, like, the goalkeepers shout at the defenders all the time. Like, that's just part of the course. If a defender makes a mistake, they'll scream at him. If the goalkeeper's making a mistake, you get the senior defenders shout him back. Remember when David De Gea first came in and he was making mistakes, and you'd get like Vidic and Ferdinand shouting at him. And I know you can say, well, Onana's new, but he's only a couple of years younger than Harry Maguire. That's why I don't really subscribe to people sort of saying, be nice to Onana, because it's not as if he's inexperienced. He played in the Champions League final last season, so they can shout at each other all they want. I'm happy. Call me crazy. I like my players showing a bit of emotion, showing that they care, going at each other, trying to wake each other up, G them up. You need more of that. You know, tired of the bad body language of a mistake happens, heads down, you know, the sort of shrug or the hands flow. You know, go at each other. You know, have a go. Show that it matters. So, I didn't even think it'd be a petty thing. I'd just be, police yourselves on the pitch. Your manager can't do everything, certainly. Broderick Full says Snickers. Simon says any dark chocolate. I tell you what, Simon, I think you're right. We had this discussion inside UVHQ the other day talking about dark chocolate. I don't mind it. I like a Bourneville. No problem with it, you know. Rahul says, at the moment it's Snickers, but it's probably going to change. Well, you know, it might change in the future. Sometimes you go through cycles with what you like and what you don't like. And that's fine. You can get a different advent calendar every year. As for I'm only on the second question. I've talked about anything but the press conference. The next question from Simon Stone, once again, was asking Erik ten Hag about what he likes about Kobbie Mainoo as a player. What does he like? What qualities does he possess that impresses the Manchester United manager? And Ten Hag said his scanning. It looks like he always has time because he is scanning. He is running free. He is scanning to see the options and make the right decisions. Can delay, can speed up. He makes the right decisions. And it's good analysis by the Manchester United manager there, isn't it? Because it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that it always appears that he's got time on the ball. It's no coincidence that he's always got space, because that doesn't just happen. You don't just, I'm very lucky. Look, no one's picking me up the whole time. There was a really good, I can't remember who did it. It might have been, was it Yuri Tielemans in pre-season? They did a thing with I think it was a Villa player in pre-season, and they put a camera on him in a pre-season game. And you've really got an indication as to, at the top elite level of football, how little time you have on the ball. Like how really it's split second stuff constantly. Get the ball half turn, there's a player there. You receive the ball, player there, player there, player there. You can't even really think about it that much. It's very instinctual, and it's very, very, very tight, very fast. And I thought it was such a great insight into, sometimes as a fan, as a viewer, whether it be in the stands or watching at home, you get angry at players, and you go, you got dispossessed there. That pass was rubbish, this, that, and the other. But you realise how quickly things are happening on the pitch, and just how good you have to be. So to constantly have the appearance that you've got space around you, to constantly have the appearance that you've got time on the ball, is because, as Ten Hag mentions, he's always scanning. He's always trying to find the right space. He's always finding pockets. He's always going, making sure that the pass, before it's even made to him, he's in a good space to receive the ball. He's always looking, even before he's received the ball, thinking, where am I going to pass it next? Who's going to be making a run into that space? Where is this player running to? What would be a good pass to make? You're constantly thinking. It's like a good chess player. You're thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead before you've even got the ball. And that's really tough to teach. And for a player his age to have that kind of mindset and nuance about is unbelievable. At this level as well, at a Premier League level, I mean, to go into a Premier League game away from home at Goodison Park, and as I said earlier on, be realistically the best player on the pitch, says a lot. I mean, it really does say a lot about his quality. So As Ten Hag mentioned, that's from the scanning, that's from the looking. I mean, people do those compilations of like, your Xavis and your Iniestas where their neck's constantly like this. They've got whiplash like that because they're constantly looking, even before they get the ball, what they're going to do with it. And I'm not saying, so you're saying Kobbie Mainoo Xavi. It's exactly what I'm saying. No, I'm just saying that that's what good midfielders have. And again, that's very, very impressive from Kobbie Mainoo, certainly. Now, we get into Andre Onana. Obviously, a lot of talk about the Manchester United goalkeeper. Flex and myself spoke a lot about him this morning too. Expectation is he is going to start tomorrow at St. James's Park. Ten Hag was asked about him, saying, look, there's been a lot of talk about him. His form has been, analysed and talked about a lot. Are we being too harsh on Andre Onana? And Ten Hag said, if you analyse it well, you see he is the second best goalkeeper in the league based on stats. His expected preventing goals is second best in the Premier League. He's doing well, but he knows that in the Champions League, he has made some mistakes, but all over the first 5 months, he has done well. What are your thoughts on his comments there, guys? What Erik ten Hag has said there about Andre Onana? Because it's a weird one, isn't it, with stats? I always say this, stats can be manipulated to fit any narrative or argument you want, positive or negative. Because if you were to look at some stats of last season with David De Gea, he got golden gloves, which I don't even think is the most amazing stat thing. But some people could have argued, well, David De Gea got golden glove last season. Does that mean he's the best goalkeeper in the league? Well, if you're going to lean on stats, right? But some stats with David De Gea, he was nearly bottom of the league. And some stats, he was kind of midway through the league. He was average, which really goes to prove my point that you can lean on anything. You can lean on any stats to prove your point that you want to make. And that's what Erik ten Hag has really done there with Andre Onana. It is a weird one because and this was kind of pointed out in the next question, but in the Premier League recently, he's been doing fine. I mean, he's kept 3 or 4 clean sheets in a row. He's made saves. It's not as if these are clean sheets with him doing nothing, because against Everton, he made some big saves. He really earned that clean sheet against Everton. And at points kept us ahead, particularly when we were 1-0 up in the first half, made a couple of really important saves. So it's not as if he's been doing completely terribly in the Premier League. He's kind of bounced back and reacted from that. It's just, it feels more specific to the Champions League this season. And that's not to say he hasn't made mistakes in the Prem, because he has. I mean, I look at that goal against Brentford that was particularly poor. But it feels like it's been more localised to the Champions League. And I don't know why. Either way, I think that Ten Hag is doing what I said I expected him to do in this press conference, which is just come out and back his player. That's what he's always going to do. He's going to come out, and whether he needs to use stats, whether he needs to not talk about stats because the stats aren't good, he's always going to come out and back his not only a player he's known for a long, long time, but a player he signed and a big decision he made with letting go De Gea and bringing in Andre Onana. That's why I sort of said, for those people that are saying, oh, he should be dropped and he's going to be dropped. No, he's not. He's not going to be dropped. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in January with AFCON if Onana goes. I think the expectation is that he's going to, but what that would mean if Bayern Deer comes in or even Tom Heaton comes in, and if they do well or United look a bit more stable and there aren't any more mistakes, it'll be interesting because Andre Onana knows that Erik ten Hag's a manager that doesn't like to rock the boat if it's going well. If a player's doing well, if the team is doing well, or even not necessarily doing well, but they're winning games, he'll keep that same team. That's what I think is going to be interesting with the team selection tomorrow. From an attacking point of view, we scored 3 goals against Galatasaray, and we should have scored more. We scored 3, could have easily scored 4 or 5, realistically, with the chances we had in the second half. So the fact that Marcus Rashford's back, does Rashford come straight back in? Who drops out? Is it going to be Anthony? It can't be Garnacho. Garnacho scored 2 and 2. A great goal in the Prem and a really good finish in the Champions League away from home. So Garnacho can't come out. So then it becomes a case of, it's either Anthony or Rashford. And Anthony actually did all right against Galatasaray. It was one of his better games, actually. He was much more productive. Tried to take players on as well. So what do they do? From the Premier League point of view, Rasmus Højlund came in the Champions League, and the rationale rather was, well, he's done well in the Champions League this season. He scored quite a lot of goals in the Champions League. What is it? Is it 5 in the Champions League this season? But Martial, he scored and won a penalty last weekend too. So there are a lot of options involved in that, and I'm sure Flex and Matty are going to get into that later on today. But, I mean, what do you think is going to be that front three? If I had to predict what I think it would be right now, Garnacho, definitely. I'm leaning to him probably starting Højlund, probably. Right-hand side, I wouldn't be shocked if it was Anthony, honestly. I wouldn't be shocked. I know that Rashford did okay-ish against Everton, or I thought he really struggled and still was very poor. I think with all of these sort of times recently, with Rashford not playing well, Erik ten Hag has kind of had maybe not the best, because he doesn't want to sort of outwardly come out and be like, oh, Rashford's playing shit, I'm going to drop him. He doesn't want to say that. He doesn't want to do that. But he's got an excuse to not play him now. Because he can just say, well, he was suspended and Anthony did well in the week and he'll come on eventually, and, you know, that's what he'll do. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's Garnacho, Højlund and Anthony. I wouldn't be shocked with that, because I think for probably the first time this season, he's got an effective out when it comes to Rashford. Now, well, am I going to be shocked if Rashford starts? Of course not. Marcus Rashford, he scored 30 goals last season and Ten Hag's backed him all season. So I wouldn't be shocked either way. But I don't think it would be like, oh my God, Rashford didn't start, because he's got a valid excuse for why. But I'm going to go with Garnacho, Højlund and Anthony. But could be massively wrong with that one. Could be massively wrong. What are people saying here? Joe says Rashford on the right. MH says, I want to see Martial and Højlund. Højlund playing on the right? I don't think that one's going to happen. I mean, and Martial definitely aren't going to play out wide. He'd turn into dust. VK says Rashford, Martial and Anthony. The thing is, you can't drop Garnacho. I mean, I get it with some of the other times that Garnacho's been dropped under Ten Hag, because maybe he's missed big chances, but I mean, he's really stood up when it matters. He scored almost sometimes the hardest goal to score, first goal of the game. You know, a great overhead kick against Everton, you know, individual brilliance, and the finish against Galatasaray was a difficult one, roof of the net as well. So yeah, I think Garnacho, out of all of those three, Garnacho is the one I'm most confident with actually starting, because he's playing so well and scoring all of the goals. And what message does it really send if he doesn't? You've scored 2 goals away from home. One was a goal of the season contender. Another was in one of the most hostile atmospheres you'll play in this season. Oh, by the way, you dropped. Why? I want to put Rashi back in. Why? Well, you know, he's Marcus Rashford, isn't he? How has he been playing recently? Not great. Not great at all. And as Bruno said in the press conference before the Galatasaray game, Garnacho's work off the ball has been much better recently too. So that's it's going to be interesting. Rich says probably Garnacho, Højlund and Rashford though. I could see it. I would, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if it was Anthony, but in the same breath, I'm not going to be shocked if it's Rashford on the right either. So that was what he said about Andre Onana. Next question was about, I mentioned earlier on, the difference in form between the Premier League and the Champions League. And the question was to Ten Hag, is it difficult to gauge how United are actually doing? The Premier League recently been doing very well, 5 wins out of 6. Champions League, only 1 win out of 5 so far. Is that frustrating? And Ten Hag said, you said it, very good. How good we play. On Wednesday, we played very good. Also in Copenhagen. Even in Bayern Munich, we played very good. But we have to do some things better. Eliminate individual errors, transition, but we can sort this out, and I would be more concerned if we didn't play well. And I kind of do understand what he's saying there when it comes to this, because coming out of the game against Galatasaray on Wednesday, I think most people, well, I heard this a lot. I heard a lot of people say this, that Man United didn't play bad. And how many times have we said that this season in more sort of recent times? At the beginning of the season, we were just playing bad. We were really sort of scraping results and we weren't playing very well at all. Recently, they've not been complete performances. I'm not going to sort of do revisionist history and trying to gaslight you into believing that we've been playing excellently, because we still haven't. But against Galatasaray, that's almost what made it more sort of gutting, because you came out of it going, we were all right today. Like, we played well, individual mistakes. Even against Copenhagen, before that red card, and I know a lot happened afterwards, you can't just focus on that, I get it. But against Copenhagen, we did do well. we did play well. I mean, he talks about Bayern Munich, that's maybe a bit more of a stretch. I understand what he's saying. Opening sort of 20 minutes or so was all right before Onana 3-1 in the back of the net. And that has happened quite a bit to us this season, where you go, we were doing all right in that game. I thought we were playing all right, creating some chances, and then just completely falls apart. But in particular, those games against Copenhagen and against Galatasaray in particular on Wednesday, it's not as if we played bad. I mean, 2 goals that are just goalkeeping errors and just really, really poor. Now, I think the argument can be made, a bit like against Everton, that the ease of which people create chances against us, that's a concern for me. The ease in which, as Ten Hag said, defensive transition, I think it's really important that he said that, because we do look so vulnerable. Like, we'll give the ball away in the middle of the pitch, or even sometimes we'll have an attack high up the pitch in the opposition's final third. They win the ball back or we give it away, and it just feels like they're just straight through us, knife through butter, and the next thing you know, it's either an Onana save, a defender's block, something like that. And a lot of the time, again, it does sort of start from an individual error. I remember one in particular, it was first half against Galatasaray, when it was Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka just did the heaviest of touches, and they were through. Unfortunately, their touch was a bit poor, and it was actually Maguire that made the block. And that's the concern too. It's the individual errors, and also just how frail we are in terms of a defensive transition. They will go straight through us, and particularly a team like Newcastle, where they can be so relentless, particularly when they pick up the ball and they just get going again. Their midfielders pick up the ball, travel with it. That's a concern, and that is where we could get really, really, really ripped apart, to be honest. So that is a concern. But I do understand what Ten Hag is saying there when he said, well, in some cases, it's not as if we played horrendously. It's just these individual errors and particularly being vulnerable in defensive transition. Next question was about Onana once again and his confidence. Saying, how is his confidence? How is he going to react? And Erik ten Hag said, also, because you have seen how he is reacting on a bad performance like in Munich. At Burnley, he was outstanding. Which I sort of thought, that's a strong... that's a bit strong. Outstanding against Burnley. He was okay. Quite literally.
Done okay.
I get Burnley. Kept a clean sheet. I remember he made a save in the first half. I think that was about it. Maybe. Didn't Burnley hit the post as well? Or did they just have a save? Either way, I don't recall him having a ton to do against Burnley. But he kept a clean sheet. And it's a bit different. Bouncing back. I mean, it's the ideal bounce back game, that, considering, look at Burnley, how they've played in the Premier League this season. Well, they're on 4 points. So when you've played and had a shocker against Bayern Munich, going away against Burnley ain't the worst thing in the world. It's a lot different to have a stinker against Galatasaray away and then play Newcastle away from home. So... yeah, but he's got to bounce back because he's going to play. Again, that's what's going to happen. A bit of an update when it comes to team news. Now, I should start this off talking about Terrell Malacia. There was an injury update on Terrell Malacia that was actually quite sort of strangely written from Manchester United. So here's what they said. They said Manchester United defender Terrell Malacia is on the course to return to action early next year as he recovers from a knee injury. So he sort of went, well, that's good. I know he was out on the grass recently, but maybe it's going to take a bit of time. And you go, okay. The Dutch left-back has not played so far this season following an operation over the summer, which, as I mentioned, I guess a lot of people didn't know that. But I thought it was fairly well known that he had a knee injury. But then this is when they sort of put the bad news underneath the sort of headline. They said, unfortunately, he suffered a setback during his rehabilitation, which required further surgery. This has been successfully completed, and Malacia is now back at Carrington and working hard to be fit early in the new year. And it would appear, according to some reports on social media, that actually this new surgery he had to have, he actually had it just a few days ago. But he's now back at Carrington, and he's working hard to be fit early in the new year. Now, what that means early next year, whether that means January, February, I don't know. But he did suffer a setback. So if you were hoping that Malacia was going to be back in the next weeks or 2 weeks or before in late December or something like that. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case. He suffered a setback and he's had surgery again on his knee. And look, it's a really serious injury, clearly. I mean, 2 knee surgeries. I mean, part of me is worried going, what is going on with these defenders getting injured, having surgery, and then having to have surgery again? I mean, it's like Lisandro Martinez, isn't it? With the foot. Goes, has surgery, cool, comes back. Oh, yeah, that's not worked, got to do it again. And then for that to happen again, this time with a knee injury, it's very concerning, very worrying. I guess the positive, and that's kind of the reason they've gone with the headline that Malacia is going to be back in the new year. But I guess that's why we signed the emergency left back, because we've still now got 2. Thankfully, Luke Shaw's back, and we still got Sergio Reguilon. So we've still got 2 people in that position. But maybe that might... I mentioned before, talking about Luke Shaw possibly playing left centre-back. I said, is Luke Shaw going to play left centre-back in Lisandro Martinez's absence? Given the fact that we've actually only got 1 other left-back, aside from Luke Shaw, maybe that's not going to happen now. So maybe we're just going to have to wait until Leacher is back. I don't know. But not good. I guess good in the sense that he is on the way back and he's going to be in the new year. But not good that we've had a similar situation where, once again, player... on the way back, then realise he's not ready to be back. He has to have surgery again on the same injury. But the other part of it was some positive news when it comes to Mason Mount. Now, Erik ten Hag said, because he was asked if we're going to have any of these players back before the Bayern Munich game, which is not this coming week, it's the week after, I think. And ten Hag said, I don't think about the Munich game. First, we go back into the Premier League, but there are players on the way back, but I can't give a prognosis on how long it will take. Mason Mount today is returning on the pitch, but I don't know how long it will take in this moment. So Mason Mount is back out on the pitch. I don't think he means, I would assume he doesn't mean with the first team. Maybe he means back out on the grass. I don't know. But Mason Mount is back, which is, again, quicker than I thought. I thought he was going to be back. I can't recall what timeline they actually gave when it came to Mason Mount and his recovery. But, I mean, look, when it comes to him, something's got to go right. I mean, what a terrible start, let's face it, to his Manchester United career. Plays the opening 2 games of the season in a midfield that just wasn't working with him and Casemiro. There was so much space and getting so overrun. Then, I think he injured his hamstring, I think it was, against Spurs or shortly thereafter. Misses a ton of time, comes back, doesn't really feature at all because he's been out for a while and he kind of lost his space, a couple of cameo appearances. And then just as you think he was going to have an opportunity in the first team because Christian Eriksen had been injured, Casemiro was injured, he gets injured as well. And now, depending on when he's going to be back, it's going to be interesting how seamlessly he gets back in. Now that you've got Kobbie Mainoo kind of emerging, that's going to be interesting. So something's got to go right for him at the moment, realistically. So I don't know, but if we get any more updates on Mason Mount and how long he's going to be out for, of course, we'll let you know about that as well. And the final question was about the opponents, Newcastle, tomorrow at St James's Park. The last few games against Newcastle, you said they were very physical. Do you expect a similar game? And Ten Hag said, I really respect them. It's a difficult team to play, but it's a good challenge, and I like to play against. We have to rise to the occasion, be on our best against them because the way they play is very organised. And look, like I said, I won't go too much into the preview. That's tonight, 6 p.m. Matty Renton and Flex breaking down that one. How am I feeling about it? Well, as I said before, I was almost more optimistic about this one than I was the Galatasaray one because I just feel like even though Newcastle, they're playing very well at the moment and at home, they are Newcastle. They beat most teams at home and they're very, very good at home. And you could say, oh, they just beat Chelsea 4-1. That's true. They beat Newcastle at home. That's true. They were very unfortunate against PSG in the week not to win that game. They were really, really unfortunate with the penalty decision. But they do have a lot of injuries, and they are coming off a Champions League game as a we, albeit the day before us. But you can just hope that maybe because we are playing better at the moment, we are playing better than we were, and we are scoring goals. As long as there aren't any mistakes, I guess we'll have a chance. It's going to be very, very difficult though. But got to be someone. Eventually, someone in that sort of top 6 or top 7 teams, we've got to beat someone away from home. And like I said, you would think eventually the injuries are going to have to catch up to them, even if they're fantastic at home. But they still got some very impressive youngsters coming through as well that are doing very, very good. So by all means, it's not going to be very easy. But as I mentioned, that'll be covered later on in the match preview. That's at 6 p.m. And then I'll be live 6:45 for late night news, talking about the embargoed part of the press conference. Any other news that breaks, you usually get it day before match day, later on in the evening. Particularly with United having a late kickoff, they've got to have something to talk about for the whole day before kickoff as well. So there'll be plenty to get into. So be sure to join me as well, 10:45-ish. And we can break down anything else, because as I always say, this part of the press conference, this is the boring part of the press conference. This is the part where you've got to get the formalities out the way. You've got to ask the questions that sometimes you're not going to get an answer for. Team news, Andre Onana, blah, blah, blah. But they ask the more probing questions. You get the longer answers in the second half of that. So we'll be live for that later on this evening as well. If you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. A reminder, match preview this evening. And anything else happens in between, we'll be here. We'll be live. We'll be uploading all the content. You know what to do. I'm out of here. Have a good one. Peace.